In the name of Allah, may peace and salutations and blessings be showered upon our Prophet Muhammad and upon his family and companions. To proceed, we warmly welcome you for another evening of inspirational lectures in our series of Safeguarding Yourself from the Hellfire. And we are again very pleased to have our resident Sheikh joining us from Saudi Arabia, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Maliki, who will benefit from and who will be delivering a lecture tonight about the month that we are in, the month of Shaban. So he'll be delivering a lecture about this, about its etiquettes and about the benefits, etc. So we say to our Sheikh, Barakallahu feekum, may Allah bless you. فليتفضلوا مشكورا.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام الأتمان الأكملان على محمد رسول الله سيد الأولين والآخرين وإمام الأنبياء والمرسلين والشافع المشفع يوم الدين وعلى آله الطيبين وأزواجه الطاهرات أمهات المؤمنين وصحابته الغر الميامين ومن استنى بسنته واهتدى بهديه إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، حياكم الله أيها الإخوة والأخوات إلى هذا اللقاء الثاني من لقاءات الإعداد لاستقبال شهر رمضان. نعم.
Indeed, all praises are due to Allah, and may He shower peace, the most complete peace and blessings upon the leader of the first and the leader of the last, the Imam of the prophets, our Prophet Muhammad, and upon his pure, righteous wives, and upon his companions, those who followed him and those who followed them in goodness. To proceed, we are delivering a lecture tonight, which is in actual fact the second part of the lecture that we delivered last week in our preparations for Ramadan.
في اللقاء الماضي تكلمنا عن رجب، عن شهر رجب الذي انتهى بغروب شمس هذا اليوم، يوم الأحد 30 من شهر رجب الموافق لل14 من شهر مارس من عام 2021. تكلمنا عن ما يتعلق بشهر رجب من الأعمال المشروعة ومن الأعمال غير المشروعة بل المبتدعة.
And last week, when we took the first part of this lecture, we discussed the virtues of the month of Rajab, the Islamic month of Rajab. And this is the month that today it ended in the Islamic calendar. It ended with the setting of the sun at the time of the Maghrib prayer today. And that was the end of the 30th of Rajab in conformity to the 14th of March in the Gregorian calendar. And last week we explained the virtues of Rajab and the actions, the permitted legislated actions that take place in the Rajab and that we're encouraged to take part in. And we spoke about those other actions that are not legislated within Rajab that the people fall into and the people commit.
وهكذا سنصنع اليوم مع شهر شعبان الذي استقبلناه مع غروب شمس هذا اليوم. وشعبان من الأشهر العظيمة المعظمة عند الله عز وجل وعند رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم، وقد دلت على ذلك نصوص سنذكر منها ما يأذن الله بذكره وما يفتح الله به علينا.
And we will do something similar as relates to the month, the Islamic month that we are in now, the month of Shaban. We'll explain the legislated actions and those actions that have been innovated as relates to it. And this month, in actual fact, it's a great month in the sight of Allah the Most High. And we'll mention some of the textual evidences that indicate this to the extent to which Allah opens upon us and allows us to do so.
في حديث أم المؤمنين عائشة رضي الله عنها أنها قالت كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يصوم حتى نقول لا يفطر، ويفطر حتى نقول لا يصوم، فما رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم استكمل صيام شهر إلا رمضان، وما رأيته أكثر صياما منه في شعبان. نعم.
And the authority of Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, who said that we used to look and observe the worship of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and we used to see him fast to the point where we would say that he would not break his fast, he would continue to fast, and at times he would continue to not fast and to be in a state where he was not fasting, to the extent to which we would say he is not going to fast. And indeed, I never saw him fast a month in its entirety except for Ramadan. And aside this, I never saw him fast more in a single month than he would in the month of Shaban.
وقد جاء عنها رضي الله عنها كما في صحيح مسلم أنها قالت لم أره أي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم صائما من شهر قط أكثر من صيامه من شعبان، كان يصوم شعبان كله، كان يصوم شعبان إلا قليلا.
And in the narration of Imam Muslim, may Allah have mercy upon him, where Aisha said as well, she said, indeed, I never saw the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, fasting more than he would in the month of Shaban. And indeed, I never saw him fast a month in its entirety. And Shaban, in this month, he would fast almost all of it except for a few days.
وأخرج الإمام أحمد في مسنده عن أنس رضي الله عنه قال وكان أحب الصوم إليه يعني إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في شعبان.
And it's been reported in the Musnad, the book of Hadith of Imam Ahmad, on the authority of Anas, may Allah be pleased with him, who said, describing the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, the most beloved fasting to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was the fasting that he did in the month of Shaban.
ولسائل أن يسأل لماذا خص النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم شعبان بكل هذا القدر من الصيام؟ ويأتي الجواب من حديث في حديث أسامة بن زيد رضي الله تعالى عنهما الذي بين فيه أنه سأل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن ذلك فقال قلت يا رسول الله لم أرك تصوم من الشهر ما تصوم، لم أرك تصوم شهرا من الشهور ما تصوم من شعبان، قال ذلك شهر يغفل الناس عنه. لاحظوا هذا، قال ذلك شهر يغفل الناس عنه بين رجب ورمضان. هذه كلها عبارات سنبين أهمية ذكرها، لماذا ذكرها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. وهو شهر ترفع فيه الأعمال إلى رب العالمين، فأحب أن يرفع عملي وأنا صائم. هذه 4 جمل أجاب بها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، سنتكلم على كل جملة منها. نعم.
And someone may ask, why does this month have this special status? And this is a good question to ask. And it was something that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, himself was asked. In the narration of Usama, the son of Zayd, may Allah have mercy upon them both, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he made the reasons behind his fasting explicit. And the narration goes as such. I said, meaning Usama ibn Zayd, may Allah be pleased with them both, I said, O Messenger of Allah, why is it that we do not see you fast a month more than you fast in Shaban? I.e., why do we see you fast so much in Shaban and we see you increase your fasting within this month? The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, responded by saying, this is a month, i.e. the month of Shaban. It's a month that many people are heedless of. It's a month that's between Rajab and Ramadan. It's a month in which the actions of the slaves are lifted and raised towards Allah the Most High, the Lord of all of creation. And I love that my actions are raised to him and I'm in a state of fasting. And this is a hadith, this is a narration that's profound. Each of these sentences or each part or aspect of this narration has some significance and importance. And what we will do now, we will have a look at each of these sentences, these 4 sentences in detail to explain the importance and significance of each of them.
قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم ذاك شهر يغفل الناس عنه. الغفلة هنا المقصود بها الاشتغال بفضل ما قبله وما بعده. فرجب شهر من الأشهر الحرم، ورمضان شهر الصيام وشهر القيام وشهر تلاوة القرآن وشهر إطعام الطعام. فالناس تشتغل بهذين الشهرين فتنسى الذي بينهما. نعم.
So the first of these sentences, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said that indeed Shaban is a month where many people are heedless. And the reason for this heedlessness is the fact that they are busy with the virtues of the month that precedes it, and they are busy with the virtues of the month that follows it. So their attention is diverted by the 2 months that are around the month of Shaban. So Rajab, which is the month before Shaban, Rajab is one of the holy months. So it has textual significance. And then Ramadan is Ramadan. It's the month of the Quran. It's the month of recitation. It's the month of fasting. And it's a month that has many, many virtues. So due to this reason, people or many people are heedless of the virtues and the benefits of this month.
وفي قوله يغفل الناس عنه إشارة إلى أهمية الأوقات التي يغفل الناس عنها. لذلك جعلت صلاة الليل أعظم النوافل، كما في الحديث لما سئل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أي الصلاة أفضل وأي الصوم أفضل، قال أفضل الصلاة بعد المكتوبة صلاة بعد منتصف الليل، صلاة منتصف الليل أو صلاة الليل، وأفضل الصيام بعد رمضان شهر الله المحرم، لأن الناس تغفل عن هذه الأوقات. نعم.
And this sentence, it also contains an indication of the importance of paying attention to worship at times when people are typically heedless or are generally unattentive of worship. And we see this as a recurrent theme. So for example, with the night prayer, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he was asked as to which of the prayers are the best. So this means which of the prayers outside of the obligatory prayers are the best. And he responded by saying the prayer that occurs after or in the middle of the night. And this is a time when people are generally asleep. And he was asked as to which of the fasting was the best. And he said that after Ramadan, of course, it's the month of Allah, the month of Muharram, because this is a month in which people are generally heedless.
قال ابن رجب الحنبلي في كتابه لطائف المعارف فهو شهر أي شعبان شهر يغفل الناس عنه لانشغالهم برجب الحرام وبرمضان، وهذا فيه إشارة إلى أن بعض ما يشتهر فضله من الأزمان والأماكن قد يكون غيره أفضل منه إما مطلقا أو لخصوصية فيه لا يتفطن لها أكثر الناس. فيشتغلون بالمشهور عنه ويفوتون تحصيل فضيلة ما ليس بمشهور عندهم، وفيه دليل على استحباب عمارة أزمان غفلة الناس بالطاعة. لعلي يحتاج أن أعيد جزءا.
أستطيع أن أترجم المعنى إجمالا لكن
جيد. نعم جيد.
طيب. So the scholar Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, he has a book Lata'if al-Ma'arif, which explains the virtues of different times, and he mentions that the month of Shaban is a month in which many of the people are unattentive and are heedless of the virtues of it, and that's because it's sandwiched between Ramadan and Rajab, and the benefits and the virtues of Ramadan and Rajab, they're very well known and they're widespread. And it may be that due to widespread and very, very well known virtues of a particular thing, that people may lose sight of other virtues that in some ways may be better, or more in a specific way, it might be better than the big virtues and the general virtues that they know. And also, this shows us the virtue, i.e. this concept of paying attention when people are heedless. It shows us the virtue of doing so, i.e. the virtue of being mindful and attentive when the people generally, they are not.
قال ابن الجوزي رحمه الله تعالى في كتابه التبصرة، قال: واعلم أن الأوقات التي يغفل الناس عنها معظمة القدر لاشتغال الناس بالعادات والشهوات، فإذا ثابر عليها طالب الفضل دل على حرصه على الخير، ولهذا فضل شهود الفجر في جماعة لغفلة كثير من الناس عن ذلك الوقت، وفضل ما بين العشاءين، وفضل قيام نصف الليل ووقت السحر.
And the scholar of Islam, Ibn al-Jawzi, may Allah have mercy upon him, he mentioned in a book that he has called At-Tabsirah, he mentioned that the times in which people are heedless and they do not pay attention to worshipping Allah, they are times at which the greatness is magnified and it's elevated. So, for example, and this is because during these heedless times, the people often, they give themselves up to their desires and their customs, which may deviate or detract them from remembrance of Allah. And he gave some examples as to this. He said, we see the virtues of praying the Fajr, the morning prayer, in congregation. And this is because people generally during this time, they're giving themselves to sleep, so they are unattentive. And also the virtue of the time that's between the time in the middle of the night in the night prayer. So this is again a virtuous time.
وقال غيره من أهل العلم: العلة في تفضيل شعبان أنه ترفع فيه الأعمال إلى الله كما جاء مصرح به في الحديث، قال: وهو شهر ترفع فيه الأعمال إلى رب العالمين، فأحب أن يرفع عملي وأنا صائم. وقد وردت هذه العبارة مع أوقات أخرى كصيام الاثنين والخميس، فلما سئل عن ذلك قال: ترفع فيهما تعرض فيهما الأعمال إلى الله وأحب أن يرفع عملي وأنا صائم.
And other than him or other scholars from the scholars of Islam, they have mentioned the virtues or the reason why Shaban is a virtuous month. And they have said that this goes back to the statement of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, that the actions of the slaves are elevated and lifted to the Lord of all creation during this month. And this is a sentence, or this is a recurrent theme, because it's been mentioned before that actions are raised to Allah, and that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, I love that my actions are raised to Allah, and I'm in a state of fasting while they are being lifted to Allah. And he mentioned, when he was asked, or when he explained about fasting on Mondays and Thursdays, he said, indeed, I love to do so, because on Mondays and on Thursdays, the actions of the slaves are lifted and raised to Allah the Most High. And I love that that I'm fasting when my actions are lifted to Him.
من الأمور المتعبد بها في شهر شعبان هو أن الإنسان إذا لم يبدأ الصوم حتى انتصف شعبان أنه لا يصوم، لما ورد بذلك الحديث من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. نعم.
And from the etiquettes of worship of this month is that the individual who doesn't start fasting at the beginning of the month, they should not start fasting once the month has reached its halfway point. And that's due to the narration of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him.
فقد جاء عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا انتصف شعبان فلا تصوموا، يعني إن لم يكن قد صام قبل النصف. نعم.
And that's the narration of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, on the authority of Abu Hurairah, that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said that when Shaban it hits its halfway point, or it's halfway through Shaban, then let none of you fast. And this is the meaning of this is the one who has not already fasted, they should not start fasting after the month has reached its halfway point.
ومن أيضا الأحكام التي تتعلق بشعبان هو عدم جواز صيام اليوم الذي يشك فيه، كما جاء في الحديث عند الترمذي من حديث صلة بن زفر قال كنا عند عمار بن ياسر فأتي بشاة مصلية، يعني مشوية بجلدها، فقال كلوا، فتنحى بعض القوم أي ابتعدوا عن الطعام، فقال إني صائم، فقال عمار من صام اليوم الذي يشك فيه الناس فقد عصى أبا القاسم صلى الله عليه وسلم. وهذا يعني أنه اليوم 30 إذا كان ليلة 30 السماء مطبقة بالغمام، أو كان الجو يعني قاتما بالغبار، لا يمكن أن يرى معه الهلال، فعندئذ يكون اليوم التالي لل29 من شعبان يوم شك، لا يدرى أهو مكمل لشعبان أو هو غرة رمضان، فعندئذ لا يصام فيه لا نفلا ولا فرضا، وإنما يفطر ذلك اليوم. نعم.
And from the other etiquettes of this month is that the individual they should not fast on the day of doubt. And we will explain now what the day of doubt is. And it's been reported, in explanation of this, it's been reported in the book of Imam at-Tirmidhi on the authority of Sila bin Zufar. Sila bin Zufar, who said that the companion of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, Ammar ibn Yasir, he was sitting in a gathering, and some fried sheep or some fried mutton was brought to them, and they started to eat. And some people at the sitting, they abstained from eating because they were fasting. And then Ammar, may Allah have mercy and may Allah be pleased with him, said, whosoever fasts on the day in which there is doubt, then they have disobeyed and gone against the example of Abu al-Qasim, meaning the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. They have gone against the guidance of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And the day of doubt, this is the day of the 30th of Shaban. And in actual fact, the night that precedes it, the night when they look for the moon, it's obscured either by cloud or by dust. So they don't know actually whether the following day is the 30th of Shaban, or they don't know if it's the first day of Ramadan. So this is why it's called the day of doubt. Because the moon is obscured and they do not have good vision or visibility, they're not sure. So the instruction here by the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, as has been stated by Ammar, is that we should not do it. We should not fast an optional fast, nor should we fast with the intention of it being an obligatory fast.
قال الترمذي بعد أن ذكر هذا الحديث قال والعمل على هذا عند أكثر أهل العلم من أصحاب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ومن بعدهم من التابعين، وبه يقول سفيان الثوري ومالك بن أنس وعبد الله بن المبارك والشافعي وأحمد وإسحاق كرهوا أن يصوم الرجل اليوم الذي يشك فيه، ورأى أكثرهم أن صيامه ورأى أكثرهم إن صامه فكان من شهر رمضان، يعني تبين لاحقا أن هذا اليوم كان من رمضان، فإنه عليه القضاء ولو كان صامه، عليه قضاء ذلك اليوم. نعم، لأن رمضان لم يبدأ إلا برؤية الناس، لذلك قال صلى الله عليه وسلم الصوم يوم تصومون والفطر يوم تفطرون، فمن صامه مع كون الهلال لم يرى ثم بعد أيام تبين من حجم الهلال أنه فعلا كان ذلك اليوم من رمضان، فلا يقول أني صمت موافقا الهلال، فإن هذا الصوم غير معتبر وعمله ذلك كان معصية للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. بل قد جاء عند ابن أبي شيبة في المصنف ذكر هذا الأثر عن عمار، ثم قال للرجل إن كنت تؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فتعال فكل، وعلق ذلك بالإيمان بالله واليوم الآخر. فلا ينبغي للإنسان أن يعني يتشدد في ذلك، بل الواجب التشدد في ضده وهو عدم الصوم، لا إتماما لشعبان نفلا ولا صيامه لما كان فرضا من رمضان أو من قضاء أو كفارة، فإنه لا يصام ذلك اليوم، كما أنه لا يصام يوم العيد. نعم.
Sorry, I started translating there. And then after after mentioning this hadith, this narration, Imam at-Tirmidhi, he has some commentary where he explains that the majority of the people of knowledge, they act upon this hadith, they act upon this narration. And some of these scholars are, for example, Sufyan al-Thawri, Malik ibn Anas, Imam Ahmad, Imam Ishaq, many of the old recognized scholars, they detested or they disliked that an individual would fast on the day of doubt. And the individual who fasts on the day of doubt, if they fast on it and then afterwards it comes to light that in actual fact that day of doubt, it was indeed Ramadan, and the people, they have to make the day up, even that individual, that person who fasted it to be sure, or just because they saw the new moon by themselves, their fasting is not accepted and it's not considered to be from the fasting of Ramadan. This is because the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he said that indeed your day of fasting, the Muslims' day of fasting, is the day that you all fast, and the Muslims' day of breaking fast is the day that you all collectively break your fast. So for this reason, the fasting of the individual who fasts on the day of doubt is not considered, and it's not correct. Rather, they have disobeyed the guidance of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And the narration that we mentioned on the authority of Ammar, it's also been mentioned by the scholar Ibn Abi Shayba, who mentions an addition to the story where Ammar, when he calls the people, or he called the people who were abstaining from eating, he said to them, "Come and eat if you truly believe in Allah and the last day." So it shows the seriousness with which he considered eating, or the seriousness with which he considered the fasting on the day of doubt. So it's only befitting and it's only right that instead of being stringent and being strict about fasting on the day of doubt, to be sure, rather the people should be stringent and they should be strict about not fasting it and breaking the fast, or not being in a state of fasting on the day of doubt. And this is similar to the state of the people on the day of Eid, on the day of celebration of the Muslims, where we would not fast. This is a similar situation.
كما ذكرنا في شهر رجب، مما فعل الناس تركوا المشروع وعملوا بالمحدث، تركوا ما جاء في كتاب ربنا من قوله منها 4 حرم، قال فلا تظلموا فيهن أنفسكم، يعني تجتنبون الظلم كله، وظلم الشرك وظلم السيئات وظلم عباد الله. فتركوا هذا وأحدثوا أعمالا، صلوات وصيام واحتفالات لم يرد فيها شيء في الشرع، وبينا ذلك في حينه. كذلك يفعلون في شعبان، فإن السنة في شعبان كما سمعتم أن يصوم الإنسان ما استطاع من أيام، وأيضا ورد فيه أمر آخر، وهو ما يتعلق بالنصف من شعبان، فيما جاء في الحديث عند ابن ماجه، لكن اختلف في صحة الحديث، والذي عليه بعض أهل العلم أنه صحيح يعمل به، وهو قول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: إن الله لا يطلع في ليلة النصف من شعبان فيغفر لجميع خلقه إلا لمشرك أو مشاح. فعلى القول بصحة هذا الحديث، فإن العمل المطلوب في منتصف شعبان هو أن يتسامح الناس ويعفو بعضهم عن بعض، وليس له عمل خاص، ليس هناك عمل خاص كما يقول بعض العوام وبعض أهل البدع. نعم.
And as we mentioned, as relates to the month of Rajab, the people, they take to it and generally they leave that which has been legislated and they act upon that which has been innovated. So where we said, as relates to Rajab, that Allah said in the Quran that there are 4 holy months, do not oppress yourselves in them, oppress yourselves by sinning, by erring, by not obeying Allah. The people made innovations and they created rituals during this month of Rajab. and they did not follow the legislation. This is similar to what the people have done as relates to this month that we are in, the month of Sha'ban. And we've already seen, and what's proceeded has been that what is legislated is that we should fast the days of Sha'ban, and this is something that's legislated. As for that which is not legislated, there is talk about the 15th of Sha'ban, and there is a narration collected by Ibn Majah where the scholars of hadith, they have a difference of opinion as relates to its authenticity. And some of them, they say that it's authentic, and we understand that some do not. And the narration is that indeed Allah, he descends on the 15th of Sha'ban, and he grants forgiveness for all of his creation except for the polytheist or the individual who has an issue, who has a dispute with someone else. And this is a narration that some of the scholars of hadith have declared as acceptable. And if we take this view that it's an acceptable narration, then the action that it necessitates is that an individual rectifies the personal relationships that they have with others. But even if we say it's an authentic narration, it does not indicate any specific act of worship that the individual should do.
وقد روى الإمام ابن وضاح في كتابه البدع، وكذلك الإمام الطرطوشي في كتابه الحوادث والبدع، عن عبد الرحمن بن زيد بن أسلم، وهو من التابعين أو من أتباع التابعين، أنه قال: لم أدرك أحدا من مشيختنا ولا فقهائنا يلتفتون إلى ليلة النصف من شعبان، ولم ندرك أحدا منهم يذكر حديث مكحول، يعني أنهم كانوا يعني يصلون في تلك الليلة وكذا، وهي ما تسمى بصلاة الرغائب، ولا صلاة ليلة النصف من شعبان، ولا صلاة الألفية. وهذه كلها قال عنها الإمام النووي رحمه الله تعالى في كتابه المجموع شرح المهذب في المجلد الرابع، قال: وهاتان الصلاتان بدعتان مذمومتان منكرتان قبيحتان، ولا يغتر بذكرهما في كتاب قوت القلوب والإحياء، قوت القلوب والإحياء، يعني الإحياء للغزالي. وقال ابن القيم رحمه الله في كتابه المنار المنيف الصفحة 98، قال: ومن الأحاديث الموضوعة أحاديث صلاة ليلة النصف من شعبان. قال: والعجب ممن شم رائحة العلم بالسنن أن يغتر بمثل هذا الهذيان ويصليها، فإن هذا من الأمر غير المستحب. وقال القرطبي رحمه الله في تفسيره، قال: وليس في ليلة النصف من شعبان حديث يعول عليه، لا في فضلها ولا في نسخ الآجال فيها، فلا تلتفتوا إليه. نعم.
شيخنا، الشيخ الأول ابن وضاح، والثاني القرطوشي.
الطرطوشي. نعم.
بارك الله فيكم. And we see that the scholar of Islam, Ibn Waddah, he mentions in his book about innovations, and also the scholar At-Tartushi, he mentions on the authority of Abdurrahman ibn Zayd ibn Aslam, who was from the early Muslims, those who had accompanied the companions of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. So he mentioned, Abdurrahman mentioned, indeed, I never met any of our people of knowledge or any of our scholars of jurisprudence who paid any attention or gave any merit to the 15th of Sha'ban, nor did they pay attention to the hadith of Makhul, and Makhul is a name. So the hadith of Makhul, which indicates the virtues of the Salat al-Raghaib, which is the prayer that we described last week. There's a special prayer, the narration that we mentioned last week, nor the prayer that's called the 1000, nor other than this. So they did not see the virtues of any of these special prayers that the people do on these occasions. And the scholar of Islam, Al-Imam al-Nawawi, he has a book called Al-Majmu', like the collection, and it's an explanation of another book of jurisprudence, Al-Muhadhab. He mentions these two prayers in this book, and he says that they are two innovated, detestable prayers that should not be paid attention to. In addition to this, the scholar of Islam, the Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentions in his book Al-Minar al-Munif, sorry, I couldn't translate that just off my head, Al-Minar al-Munif, he mentions that the prayer that's been mentioned in some of the narrations on the 15th night of Shaban is one that's fabricated. So it's a hadith, it's a narration that's been made up. And he said it's incredible to see some of the people of knowledge who have knowledge that they pray the prayer that is contained in this fabricated narration. And then finally, the scholar of Islam, Al-Imam Al-Qurtubi, he mentions in his explanation of the Quran, he mentions about the 15th of Sha'ban, and he says that there is no single hadith that is authentic as relates to it, and there is no single hadith that we should pay our attentions to as relates to the 15th of Sha'ban.
وأخيرا مما يجدر التنبيه عليه هو خطأ بعض الناس الذين أرادوا أن يشاركوا في الخير، ولكن لقلة العلم وجعلوا يعني يستخدمون هواتفهم الذكية في نشر الرسائل. مثلا يوم الجمعة يكتبون جمعة مباركة، وهذا من البدع. وإذا جاء رجب قالوا اللهم قالوا نعم، قال اللهم بلغنا رجب وشعبان وبلغنا رمضان أو نحو ذلك. وأيضا في شعبان يكتبون العفو والمسامحة في أول ليلة، يعني مثل الليلة هذه. وأنا أنظر في هاتفي قبل قليل وأجد أحدهم قد أرسل إلي كلاما يعني من هذا القبيل، يقول ماذا؟ لعلي أقرأ. هكذا يقول: في أول ليلة من شعبان أسأل الله القدير أن يبارك لنا ولكم في شعبان ويبلغنا وأن يرزقنا بالقبول إلى آخره. ويقولون إيش؟ يعني العفو والمسامحة. كل هذا من البدع المحدثة التي لا يجوز نشرها ويعني التواصي بها، فإن هذا مما يضعف جانب السنة ويضعف السنة والعمل بها عند الناس، كما جاء في الأثر أنه من أعان صاحب بدعة، من تبسم بوجه صاحب بدعة فقد أعان على هدم السنة. وجاء: ما أحيا الناس بدعة إلا أماتوا سنة، وما عمل الناس بدعة إلا رفع الله، وما أحدث الناس بدعة إلا رفع الله مكانها سنة ثم لا تعود إليهم. فلذلك ينبغي الحذر من أي أمر محدث، يبتعد الإنسان منه ويلتزم السنة، والسنة خير، وهو ما أوحاه الله إلى نبيه، وهو ما يحبه من عباده. أسأل الله بمنه وكرمه أن يرزقنا وإياكم العلم النافع والعمل الصالح والتزام السنة، إنه سبحانه وتعالى ولي ذلك والقادر عليه. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه.
Barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullah khair, Shaykhana. And finally, I say that, or I highlight an error that some people fall into. And it's an error that they fall into with good intentions, and they intend to spread that which is good, but it's something that, because it stems from a lack of knowledge, it's something that's incorrect. And that's what the people do with smartphones nowadays when they forward messages. And they forward these messages and these specific greetings as relates to certain times and certain times that have virtue. So, for example, on the day of Jum'ah, they will send a message of Jum'ah al-Mubarak. So, like, have a blessed Friday, and things like this. And also, when we meet the month or we enter the month of Rajab, there is a supplication that they mention, "Oh Allah, give us blessings in Rajab and Shaban, and allow us to meet, or allow us to be alive for Ramadan." And other than these, but these types of messages. So these are messages that that are not authentically narrated upon the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. So the people shouldn't send them. And it's the case that when people innovate such practices, it causes the Sunnah to be diluted, and the importance of the Sunnah and the importance of adhering to the example of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, weakens in the hearts of people. And there is a narration that whosoever aids the person of innovation, they have aided them in killing or in ending the example of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And it's also been said that indeed the people do not innovate an act of worship in Islam, except Allah raises upon them a sunnah, something from the example of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, will be raised from them. And the sunnah, it's important to say, the sunnah is that which is best. It's what Allah the Most High revealed to his Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and within this is every good. So I ask Allah the Most High, the one who is all able, to grant us beneficial knowledge. I ask him to give us the success that we adhere to the example of his final Prophet, for indeed he, Allah, is the one who is able to do this, and the one or the only one who can be responsible or who can allow this to happen. And may he send and shower peace and salutations and blessings upon our Prophet Muhammad and upon his family and companions and those who follow them until the day of resurrection.
Jazakallah, Sheikh. Jazakallah, Nakil. Thank you, Tom. Just a few questions in regards to Ramadan, inshallah. Some of the masjids may be opening for Ramadan to pray Taraweeh. How would you advise that? Because I think it's not really encouraged by the government, even though we don't know if there's going to be a statement made out yet in regards to it. We haven't heard anything yet, but we know that it's still early. The pandemic is still here, and we know that in the masjids, we know that it can be quite clogged up, especially since we've missed it last year. A lot more people may take the risk of going. So what do you advise with that?
شيخنا بارك الله فيكم وأثابكم الله. المساجد عندنا في بريطانيا ستفتح بل هي مفتوحة الآن، لكن ستفتح في رمضان لصلاة التراويح. والحكومة حقيقة في هذا الوقت لا تحث على الحضور، يعني على الحضور بكثرة. ونعلم من من عدم إقامة رمضان في المساجد في العام الماضي. نعلم ونحس أن إذا افتتحت المساجد الآن ستمتلئ وسيكثر الناس فيها. فما نصيحتكم لنا في هذا الوقت شيخنا؟ بارك الله فيكم.
أولا نسأل الله عز وجل أن يعجل بزوال هذه الغمة ورفع هذا البلاء من الأرض جميعا، حتى يعود الناس إلى عباداتهم في بيوت الله وإلى حضور مجالس العلم دون خوف ودون وجل، وأن يعود الناس إلى حياتهم وتعود الدعوة إلى الله عز وجل كما كانت من قبل. هذا أولا. ثانيا، إذا كان الوباء لا يزال يضرب في الأرض، وهذا الذي نسمع ونقرأ من أخبار العالم برمته، وخاصة العالم الغربي حيث قلة الالتزام بالاحترازات، فإن هذا فيه تعريض لحياة المرء وحياة غيره للخطر، تعريض لحياة المرء وحياة غيره للخطر. والنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وقف إزاء الكعبة يوما فقال: إن لك عند الله لحرمة، وإن حرمة المسلم أعظم عند الله من حرمتك. وكون الإنسان يصلي صلاة الليل في رمضان، أو يعني في رمضان في بيته حفاظا على صحته وصحة غيره، أفضل من المجازفة بالذهاب إلى المسجد والصلاة هناك، حيث يكون ازدحام وتكاثر وعدم تقيد بالاحترازات، وقد يأتي من قد يكون به هذا الوباء إلى المسجد فينشره بين المصلين، وبالتالي بالإضافة إلى كونه سيؤذي وربما يتسبب في موت آخرين، بالإضافة إلى ذلك سيكون هذا الناتج سبب في إغلاق المساجد، وبدل أن تغلق للاحتراز أغلقت كنوع من العقاب عندئذ. فلذلك ينبغي للإنسان أن يحتاط لنفسه. ما دام أن البلاء ما زال منتشر فالواجب الحذر، والصلاة في بيته مع العزم والنية أن يؤديها في المسجد سيعطى أجرها كاملة كما لو صلاها جماعة في المسجد. نسأل الله عز وجل أن يرزقه ذلك. لكن المجازفة فيها يعني خطر صحي وخطر أيضا ديني على الإنسان، قد يأثم بذلك، لأن الله عز وجل يقول: ولا تلقوا بأيديكم إلى التهلكة. نعم، والله أعلم.
Firstly, in response to this, we say and we ask Allah the Most High that He lifts from the entire world, He lifts this plague and this illness that is affecting the people. And it's affecting the people in terms of their daily lives and in terms of their worship. So we ask Him that He lifts it so that the people can return to doing that which they used to do, from attending the places of worship, from attending the masajid, and attending the beneficial circles of knowledge, and indeed calling and propagating to Allah the Most High. Secondly, if we find, and it is the case, that this disease or this virus is still prevalent, and this is what we read this is what we read, and this is what we learn, that it is still prevalent, especially in the West, then to put oneself in front of it and to put oneself at risk of it is something that they are putting themselves in front of that which can damage their lives. and the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he stood in front of the Kaaba, which is obviously a very holy place, and he said, indeed, you have a degree of sanctity in the sight of Allah the Most High, but the sanctity of the Muslim is greater than your sanctity. So the sanctity of the Muslim life, it has sanctity. In addition to this, what we see as a result of this is that the night prayer or the Taraweeh, if one was to pray this at home with the intention of maintaining their health, is better for the individual. And this is because the masjids, they are going to be busy, and in the masjids it was difficult to maintain social distancing at all times. It cannot take place all the time, when entering and exiting, etc. So if an individual were to attend the masjid, it may be that they could, and they have the virus and they're unaware of it, they may infect someone else. And as a result of this, the person that they infect would die, and then they would be culpable for that. But there is another ill effect that they could have, and this effect is that if something like that were to happen in one of the masjids, it could lead to all of the masjids being shut down and being forced to close for all of the prayers. So this is an instance where we have to look to the benefits. So the individual, they should look after themselves and look after their health. And what's obligatory is for them to be mindful of this virus. So they should pray the night prayer, the Taraweeh, they should pray it at home. And if they do so with the intention and the determination that they would have prayed it in the masjid, then Allah will give them their reward completely. However, for an individual to be obstinate and to put themselves forward and to put others at risk, this has harms in terms of the worldly life, whereby they could infect someone, and it also has harms in terms of, or in a religious sense, whereby they are sinning. And Allah the Most High said, and do not take yourselves towards your own destruction. And Allah knows best, and may peace and salutations be upon our Prophet Muhammad.
Jazakallah, Sheikh. I think we can squeeze in a quick question. If you're sick or you have any of the symptoms of the COVID, do you still have to fast? And if not, do you have to still make it up?
شيخنا، إذا مرض أحد وكان عليه التأثرات، لا أدري إذا كان هذا التعبير صحيح، لكن إذا كان لديه تأثرات الوباء، هل يجب عليه أن يصوم أو هل له الإفطار؟ وإذا أفطر هل عليه القضاء؟
أما مسألة الصوم والإفطار فهذا يرجع إلى قول الأطباء. إذا كان الأطباء يرون أن الصوم مع هذا المرض أي مرض كان لا يؤثر، فيجب عليه أن يصوم. إن كان لا يؤثر عليه في سرعة برئه أو لا يؤثر في زيادة يعني تضرره بسبب الصوم مع وجود المرض، هذا يرجع إلى الأطباء. فإذا قالوا لا تصوم فإنه يفطر. فإذا قال الأطباء أن هذا الإنسان لن يتمكن من الصوم أبد الدهر فإنه يفطر ويطعم عن كل يوم مسكين. لكن إذا قالوا لا تصوم هذه الأيام ومن أجل أن يعجل تأثير العلاج وتبرأ بإذن الله، فإنه ينتظر، فإذا طاب قضى. فمسألة القضاء من عدمه متعلقة بمدى كون المرض ممكن الشفاء منه أو غير ممكن. فإذا كان من الأمراض التي ممكن الشفاء منها فإنه ينتظر حتى يشفيه الله عز وجل فيقضي. وإن كان من الأمراض التي يحكم أهل الطب بأنها مزمنة دائمة ولا يستطيع معها الصوم، إما لكون الصوم يضر به، أو لكونه يجب أن يأخذ علاجا في أثناء النهار، فإنه عندئذ يفطر، لزاما يفطر حتى يحافظ على صحته ولا يتضرر، فإن هذا قد يؤثر حتى على صلاته. إذا تضرر وزاد الضر عليه عجز عن الصلاة، وهذا غير مطلوب شرعا. أرجو أن أكون قد أجبت بصورة كافية، والله أعلم.
جزاكم الله خير وبارك فيكم شيخنا. So the matter of fasting and breaking the fast when one due to illness and sickness, this is something that goes back to the doctors. So if doctors advise that the sick person is able to fast, then they shouldn't break their fast and they should fast. However, if the doctors say that if an individual were to fast in this state and it would either worsen their state and make them sicker, or it would delay their recovery, then they should not fast and they should break their fast. And then on top of this, if it's an individual who can never fast, so they're never likely to regain or have the ability to fast, then they break their fast, and then for every day they feed a poor person instead of fasting. So really it goes back to and we refer to the doctor, and the doctor, they will give advice on whether or not the person can recover from their sickness or is able to fast. So if the person is able to recover after their sickness, then what they should do is they should wait until they're feeling better and then make up their fasts. And if they're in a state that they're never able to fast, they should break their fast and feed a poor person on each day. And if the individual is affected by fasting in such that the sickness is made worse or their convalescence from the sickness is delayed, then they should not fast, rather they should break their fast. Jazakumullah khair wa baraka feekum, Shaykhana. May Allah reward our Shaykh, because it's quite late there in Saudi Arabia. Abdul Hakim, please come on in.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh, Jazakallah khair, Akil and Tom. Just to put it out there that we're working on Quran classes and lectures every day of Ramadan, inshallah. We'll give confirmation, inshallah, within the next week or so, inshallah, but it's something that we're planning on. We did it last year during the lockdown, and inshallah we will be doing it this year, inshallah. And we ask Allah to give us the opportunity to go into the masjids the following year, so we can continue praying with each other, praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also doing a taraweh in sign language, inshallah, which we'll continue with hopefully next year. But again, Jazakallah khair everybody for listening, for paying attention, and inshallah we'll continue next week, Sunday.
Inshallah.
جزاكم الله خير, بارك الله فيكم. شكرا عبد الحكيم, شكرا عقيل. Thank you, Tom. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.